Hello, my dear friends. Today, Anne van der Giessen is accompanying me because privately we've been having lots of conversations that we believe will be very meaningful for you. You may remember her. She was a speaker during the Wounds to Wings summit that we had in March this year. She is, well, amazing. I really, really love this woman. She's a coach, a certified master coach. And I love what she says because she really means it. She helps men get free by finding more peace, power, and possibility in their lives. And I absolutely love to talk to her because I help women. She helps men. And when we have our conversations, we find so much harmony, so much compassion, so much possibility. And that's the reason why she's here, because we're going to be talking about precisely that: peace, power, compassion, reconciliation between the genders and within ourselves. So I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much, Blanca. It's always a pleasure to chat to you. And I just love that there's so much space in our conversations as well to go to all these places. And I think that's by virtue of the compassion that we both really work so hard to cultivate and just to open ourselves to new ideas and new perspectives. So thank you for having me here and opening this space to connect and share.
Thank you so much, Anne. And before we open, we were talking about how this year has been a roller coaster for us. In my case, was from hustling and working really myself silly to release and let go. Suffering all the news and the media, and trying to use all my spiritual ninja skills, but still suffering and it hurt. So, and now I feel more aligned because I reduce a lot of that content and increase more my journaling, meditation. How has it been for you? How has you experienced that this year emotionally and with your people as well?
Well, thank you for that question, Blanca. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to sort of put it in a concise storyline for me, other than to say it's been really sort of up and down, up and down, and a little bit of a mismatch between how I feel like I'm showing up to life. You know, if I am in my integrity and everything, I'm doing everything that I can to kind of create better circumstances for myself, and what's actually showing up in my reality. It seems that those two don't always track each other. So sometimes I think that I'm really showing up powerfully and doing what I can, and then reality reflects back and goes, nah. And sometimes I think I'm being lazy or complacent or just letting things go, and then things start to happen. So it's a funny it's been a funny time, and also for me personally, I went back to Australia in the middle of the year for the first time in 2.5 years, which was a big shake up of my system as well. So I used to go back sort of pre-pandemic every 12 months, and so spending 2.5 years away from family was pretty tough, and then going back and then leaving them again. So all these things, I guess, they have the potential to move us emotionally, and I allowed myself to be moved by that as well, because I think, you know, we can be stoic and say, okay, just get on with it, but life does touch me quite closely, and I think it's a part of what makes me me, and so I move with that to some extent. I challenge my beliefs sometimes, but other times I just allow myself to be moved, because I think there's something in that as well. In terms of what I see with my clients, as you mentioned, I serve mostly men, and that's been something that's happened very much organically. I've just recently decided to sort of shift my marketing a little bit more towards focusing on men specifically, because it's reflective of a reality that it is that way in my business anyway. So I serve all people, but it's mainly men that I've got on my coaching agenda at the moment. And it's been really, really beautiful to witness them. Our last conversation, we talked a little bit about this idea of toxic masculinity, but what I see is not toxic masculinity. I see a lot of really incredible men doing really powerful things in their lives, working really hard on their relationships, both personal and professional, working on their ability to show up in full presence to life, working on their own sort of emotional regulation and broadening their experience of life as well. I think a lot of men sort of come in thinking that they've only got a couple of emotions, but through the work that I do with them, they say, oh, wow, there's a lot more to be revealed and uncovered. And that's just really, really beautiful to see with this backdrop of the conversation about the toxic masculinity, which I always try and step out of because I don't think it's particularly useful. But I just see men doing these wonderful things and reclaiming who they are, and a little bit like myself, I guess, allowing themselves to be moved by life as well. Not needing to hold on to some of these old ideals and expectations. And that's been really beautiful, really, to see men in that energy of more surrender and going with the flow. It's a wonderful thing.
But it's so beautiful that you share that with us, because I see like different stories. The one story is that the men are bad. The feminists totally all men all are bad, all are rapists, all are bad. That's one story. And another story is that men are victims, and they don't have all the feminists, all the women are taking over all their jobs, and both are, there are rapists. There are boys living in the basement of their mom playing video games. Yes. But let's look at the hope. Let's look at the hope of the men and boys who are actually I think of my son. I say delivering the homework on time, and for that, all the care, the planning, the intention, and the love, and the joy, and the homework. Of course, in the case of my son, is I don't know, mathematics or whatever. But in the case of all these other men, is saying I love you, showing up for the anniversary, supporting a colleague, showing up even for themselves to exercise, to hire a coach. I think that's huge. I'm so happy that you shared this with us.
Yeah, no, thank you, Blanca. And it's interesting, because I sometimes get questions from people, particularly women. It's like, well, why would you coach men? Like, what's that all about? And I really believe that we have to deal with the reality that we have in front of us, and that is that there are many more men in positions of power, in positions of leadership, and they don't know what they don't know. And I think when we enable those or people that do have influence over more people, so whether it's somebody that's leading a company or a government or a family, like, it doesn't really matter what sort of structure we're talking about, but when we help them to understand themselves a little bit deeper and to grow their own sense of compassion, of curiosity, of genuinely caring about people, even of play, cultivating play has been a topic that comes up on the agenda too. Everyone around that person gets to benefit, and that includes, the wives and partners of these men that I'm working with. It includes their employees if they're a business owner, for instance, or their team if they're in some sort of management position. And so to me, it actually doesn't matter who's sitting in front of me. But what I really love about working with these men is it's the ripple impact. It's enormous, and there's just not many safe places for men to go. So my whole thing is, creating more of these safe spaces, and just really welcoming men into that, because everyone gets to benefit. This is not men for men, it's helping men for everyone. And yeah,
it's so exciting. The words that touched my heart was cultivate play. Play is where I've been really interested in Piaget, the psychologist of play, and he says that all innovation, everything is born out of play. And in more spiritual ways, play is the genesis, play is the womb, play is the divine feminine. Where are we more playful, but when we are generating something new? And we are generating something new when there is tension, and a tension that is not balanced, that it has to be exciting, like riding a bicycle. And it sounds to me like you are bringing, without using these terms, you're bringing the divine feminine into the life of these men.
Yeah, I really think for a large part that's what it is, Blanca. But I can't really put that in my marketing, otherwise I think my calendar would be empty. But but no, I really think that's what it is, and it's fascinating if you want to talk about things in the context of science as well. I mean, how many entrepreneurs are going, oh yeah, we want to get into flow state, you know, because when we're in flow state, when we're more creative, when we make all these amazing things. What they're talking about, without really knowing they're talking about it, is also, as you say, it's the divine feminine. It's cultivating that in themselves. There's all of these flow states. I recently read the book Stealing Fire by Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel, and that was all about these different ways to get into flow state, whether it's from certain activities or dance or the use of some psychedelics as well, like whichever way you want to get into it through. But it was all about creating a space where this feminine energy can emerge. And they never once labeled it that, but that's what they're talking about. And I think it's really funny how important it is to label things in certain ways. Yeah, it's really interesting though, because when you help a man see that he's got much more depth than what he was aware of, that he's got this enormous capacity to love and to honor and to be in a state of trust and to express his truth from something much deeper, what you see happens is all of his relationships start to transform, and he's like, whoa, what is this magic? But it is really creating like that tension, as you say, it's creating that inside of oneself. And then you develop your ability to be able to do that with the external world also. And I think that's really, really powerful.
So exciting. And in reality, this is what we should all be doing, men, women, children, and you know, everybody. This divine marriage, you know, this idea for me is like the opposite of an idea I dislike, the work-life balance. Because for me, balance, it sounds like a weight, like life is heavy and work is heavy, and it should be something that gives us life. And when we marry, I love the idea of stealing fire. I love the idea of marrying the two, the divine feminine and divine masculine, to bring us, to uplift us. What do you think? Because of course you are a lady, but you work with men. I would love your advice. What do you think? How women could be doing this merging, particularly women who are really busy and executives. What should they be doing?
Do you mean in the context of themselves or in relationship with the men? Or either or?
Yeah, I think well, let's start with whichever you want, but at the end they are going to integrate. That would be my preconception.
Yeah, no. Well, I agree. I think it's important that we understand the nature of those energies and how they move inside of us, because it helps us to recognize when we see that in the outside world also. I think just really coming back, we said before we started this, hit record on this conversation as well, this idea of coming back to basics. And I think the basics in this sense is to understand that there are two kind of dominant energies in the world, and they're really kind of 50-50. It's that I can put some other words around it. So the masculine, but it's also like the doing, the driving, making things happen. It's a bit more this sort of pushing energy. Whereas the feminine, again, put some other words around it, more the flow, the allowing, the receivership. That's the other side of it. And you've got the yin yang as well as a sort of the representation of that, the dark side of the mountain versus the light side of the mountain, the day, the night, whatever you want, however you want to frame it. But I think coming back to the real sort of basics and foundational building blocks of that, and understanding that as a woman, if you are an executive and working a job that is very demanding and requires you to always be on and driving and pushing and managing, that you're probably going to be very much in that masculine driving energy most of the time. So the work for somebody like that is in actually learning to let go and relax and surrender a little bit more, to have an experience of that, because it's like if you go to the gym and then you're lifting dumbbells, but you're only lifting them with one arm, right? You're going to get a really overdeveloped arm. So probably anytime you pick up something heavy, you would pick it up with that arm that you've been training more. So a woman is going to become very practiced at being in that driving energy. So I think the work for somebody like that fits that kind of profile, being very general here, is to get some repetitions on the other side. I mean, I know for me, when I was working in finance as well, one thing I loved more than anything was when my partner would arrange dinner, like where we would go for dinner. Like, you just tell me, it's this place, it's this time, like this is what we're doing. It's just like, I just melt, I don't have to make a decision. I can just kind of go with the flow and just show up. That felt really, really good. So I think really noticing that and looking for opportunities in your life where you can just let go. And that might look like blocking out a certain amount of time in your agenda for nothing, just to enjoy, to actually sit and eat your lunch properly and chew and taste everything that you're putting in your mouth, and being present when you're walking outside in nature and noticing. It's beautiful at the moment. We're going into autumn, all these colors, just taking time to notice all of that. But to me, that's what balance is. It's understanding the driving forces that move you, and learning how to sort of move in and out of different types of energy. Because that's what's really going to restore the system. And it's also going to help to recognize those things in other people as well.
Yeah. And I think the driving forces are also the things that are chronic thoughts that we think that are true. A big driving force of mine was the pleasing my mom. Did I do the homework good enough? Did I clean good enough? Am I dressed well? Is my hair in the right place? Etc. The list never ended. It never ended. And now my dear mom has passed 2 years ago, and still I'm thinking, did I clean good enough? Did I?
Yeah.
And this good enough is very present in many of us, particularly in the high achievers.
Yeah, it's a really important concept you talk about, and this is something that's very much universal. It doesn't belong to a specific agenda. It can't be assigned. It's one of these core beliefs that can develop on an unconscious level and really drive us. And that I'm not enough one is really, really powerful. And to take that to the extreme, sometimes I'll even come across that people that have a belief that is not just I'm not enough, but I am bad. And it's the same kind of energy, and it can drive the same kind of behaviors. And I think it's really important that we start to challenge those things and really, really take ownership over it.
You make me laugh because, of course, I have that belief that I'm bad. When okay, now the entire internet is going to know this. When my husband actually told me that he loved me, All the food came out. Because my gods couldn't believe that that reality could exist, because I was not good enough for a man like him who's perfect to love me.
Yeah, yeah. It's such a big thing. Thank you for sharing that, Blanca, because it feels really, really tender. It really does.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that,
Yeah. We don't, because I'm bad, I don't deserve love. Because I'm bad, I don't deserve a child. Because I'm bad, I don't deserve customers, more customers, or better paid customers. Or even, some people stay in a corporate job because they are bad, so they
mm,
cannot be an entrepreneur. This concept of being bad is also
mm,
very prevalent, but people don't
mm.
talk about it often.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And that's largely because of the shame, right? Because shame, what it does to us is, if you believe on a core level that I'm bad, you do everything that you can to make yourself look good, right? It's the way of finding a way to be accepted in the world. And the other expression of that, and this is what I find super interesting, and I think is a reason to really have compassion around this, is that the high-flying corporate banker is driven by the same belief system that the drug addict on the street is. And people look at the drug addict on the street and go, that's bad, that's not okay. And then they look at the high-flying corporate and going, oh, that's good, maybe he works a little bit too much, but good, he's got a nice car, nice house, nice family, good, right? But both of those things, whether it's overworking and never making time to actually be with your family, and just deciding, no, I'm just going to ease the pain with some sort of substance or whatever it is, both of those things come from that belief that I am bad, or I'm not enough. Generally with those extremes, it's I am bad.
Absolutely. And because work addiction is not just ignored as an addiction, but is celebrated. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm busy, busy, busy. Oh, so I am good.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's the opposite, work addiction.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And just to share a little personal anecdote of mine in that as well, because it's something that I absolutely had. Um, so much of my self-worth was attached to my job when I was in finance. Anything below a 4-star review, and 3 was an average star out of 5. Everything below a 4-star review, if I got, I would think that I was completely worthless and that I'd messed it up, and I thought everything was going to fall apart in my life. So I needed to be not just good enough, but I needed to be above average. In fact, 5-star was my ideal. If I got 4 stars, I'd be questioning, like, what did I do wrong? Like, what was off? What could I have done better? And I didn't really anticipate what would happen actually when, because I did a little bit of coaching while I was still in my job, and decided through that I needed to step away. I needed to do something else, and I did a little bit of retraining while I was still working. But when I stepped out of my job and lost this feedback mechanism that was reaffirming that I was okay, I completely fell apart, completely. And so I think it's really important when you start doing the work, as we call it, but when we start this process of questioning our own beliefs and how we really feel about ourselves, how we've internalized those things from our parents, from our family of origin, that we don't just ask who are we with those beliefs, but who are we in the absence of those beliefs.
And that's really confronting, because when you are without those beliefs, then what? Then what? So if I am good, then what?
Mm,
Uh, Continue with that story that my husband actually said that he loved me. That was terrifying, because if I really am with this man, he, the possibility that he will leave me, the world will
mm,
collapse.
mm-hmm,
When I became a mother now, oh, how wonderful! Oh, I'm a good person. I'm pregnant. Oh my God, the possibility that the baby could die. And so on and so forth, that you constantly through life get confronted to facts that tell you that you are a good person, and the same fact brings you back to the danger of being punished
Yeah.
for your fundamental guilt or badness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and maybe it's a new evolution of that same belief and how that's kind of showing up. So it's probably not exactly the same energy, but it's hitting the same thing as it sort of swirls around. And I think each time it goes around, we do heal something, we do transform something in ourselves, but there's still that little piece of resonance. And sometimes I wonder, given the human experience and the nature of how our psyche is built up and these incredibly complex connections between the mind and the body, sometimes I wonder if it's possible to get, really completely 100% free of those things. And I don't think it is. I would be really happy to hear somebody who believes that it is, and why and how. But I think it speaks to our humanity, really, and kind of the tenderness of this human experience and what we all kind of bring to the table. I think there's something beautiful and sacred in the fact that there's always going to be, in my head as well, there's always going to be that little niggling voice that says that's not enough. You're not good enough, or if you do that, you're bad. And part of the work is in learning to relate to that, rather than listening to it and treating it as like it's God on some level, but really learning to make it a dialogue rather than something that's being preached to you.
Possibly this was the biggest transformation for me during this summer. That I decided, because I carry massive trauma from my childhood, and I've been working a lot with it thanks to healers, psychologists. I've been receiving so much good help. And this summer for me, I realized there is no way out of the trauma. I have trauma. I have childhood trauma, complex childhood trauma. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Like all humanity has trauma. And I'm not going to try to heal it. I'm not going to try to erase it. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't exist. I'm just going to make friends with it and do the best I can. So and that has, reduce stress, get more peace. It's really, really, really powerful to be okay with being bad.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing it, Blanca, because I think this is everything in the transformation space. It's everything. I think really coming at our challenges with that different energy, but it's okay to be there. And I'm gonna love it. I'm gonna treat it tenderly. I'm gonna keep kind of holding it. But I'm not gonna try and destroy it anymore, because it's really destroying a part of ourselves when we come at it with that energy. And I think just the fact that you can share that shows how much incredible work you've done, because you don't arrive at being able to say that in one day. Going from a true core belief that I'm not enough, or even I'm bad, to being like, you know what, I'm gonna invest in myself, gonna take really good care of myself, and at the end of the day, I know I'm not perfect, and that's totally okay. It's such a transformation.
Such a transformation. I remember when somehow at the beginnings of the journey, 25 years ago, happened this conversation. 25 years ago, I was feeling bad for no apparent reason. So a friend of mine said, you should talk to the psychologist. So I talked to the psychologist and I started to understand a little bit of my childhood trauma. So I told her, oh, my mother this, my father that. But I'm determined this year solve everything about. And the woman was professional, it was not an awful person, but it almost couldn't contain the laughter. Do you really think that this year, in 12 months, you're going to, heal all of these at that time 20 something years of trauma, all your ancestral trauma, all the collective unconscious trauma. And now I understand why she had to laugh. It's a big journey, and possibly it's the journey of a lifetime, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
okay. Not to be okay. It's okay not to be okay. I think that's the conversation of today. Actually, I want
Absolutely.
to show it to you something. It's hilarious. The people who, every Monday, I have a Facebook group where we talk about how to live, how to embody the divine feminine, which is what we're talking about here, and myself. And every Monday, I pull a card from my oracle deck, and for 3 weeks, I've been getting exactly the same card.
Oh, wow.
How is it possible? I don't understand. And this card, my God, it fits very much what you, because it's an Aboriginal elder.
Mm,
And the story behind this card is to release ancestral patterns.
mm,
And and this is what we are doing right now. This is what I'm doing right now, because a huge ancestral pattern that is alive in me is not to trust others, especially women, and
mm,
especially powerful women.
mm,
And I invited Anne to come and join us because it's part of my own journey to co-create with powerful women like herself.
mhm.
And I invite you if you want to be part of the group as well. Um, Maybe you want to say something about that and how that resonates with you. If this card was for you of
Mhm.
releasing ancestral trauma.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it does like on many levels, I think, from both my maternal side and my paternal side. And a part of why I moved to the Netherlands more than 6 years ago now was to understand my paternal side a little more. And I've been able to see a lot of what's showing up in my life, and that it's kind of no mistake. I even read some research actually the other day, and I saved the article down. So funny you should mention this. And that was really sort of proving another proof case of why it's actually relevant to look at ancestral trauma and epigenetics, and how it really does affect how we are in this lifetime. The people that have come before us are, we're carrying them in our bodies in more ways than we would know. So it resonates deeply with me, and it's my work too. This powerful woman thing is interesting also. It was something that I only confronted actually once I got into my professional career, and I found that also quite challenging to deal with. And I'm actually touched that you should look at me as a powerful woman as well. I guess I don't give myself that label personally. But yeah, it's absolutely been part of my journey, and I think it's like anything, it's important to sort of challenge a little bit and go, well, where did this belief come from? Is it mine? Is it mine to hold, or is it something that I've been carrying? And can I give myself permission to put it down, and even just for a moment, even just to feel what life feels like in the absence of that belief.
I love the subtlety of what you say. Many times we just say release that and release it and let it go. But what if we don't release it, but we just put it down and for a
Mm,
moment? It's such a different energy. Is
mm,
not We are so attached to these old beliefs that look like our identity, but if we carefully put it down like a glass, not that
mm.
we're going to drop it and it's going to be shattered, all your psychology is going to be shattered, but just put it down. Very powerful.
Yeah,
I would like
absolutely.
to, ladies and gentlemen, if you have liked this conversation and you would like to us to come back again, please type it in the comments. What would you like to ask us? Would you like me to bring other ladies from the Wounds to Wings Summit, somebody else who will be here? Please let us know if you like this format. We want to create more of concrete forms of living in a divine feminine way. So, Anne, let's start saying goodbye, or let's close this conversation. You know my question. What do you feel? What does your intuition say people need to hear to close this conversation?
I'm really at the moment in this minute, like I'm just feeling such a resonance of gratitude for you, and also all of the women who have been willing to say yes to being part of your community, because I think really learning to cultivate this aspect of ourselves that is the divine feminine, whether you're a man or a woman or however you identify, I think it's so important. It's part of the healing that the world needs, and so I'm just so grateful for everyone that's willing to open themselves to this work, because it is challenging work at times. It is tender. It can be tough, and it's just beautiful that we get to do it together. So thank you, Blanca, and thank you everyone who's tuning in as well for opening yourself to this conversation.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for being here. We see each other next week. Take care.